Hey, Mike Stagg's here today to talk to us about personal protective equipment. One of those critical parts of our safety program. Mike.
Yeah, you're right, Jason. This is a totally critical part of the safety program, and it's a huge topic. There's so many things involved in personal protective equipment. I'm going to try and break it down for you in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So bear with me as we sprint through this personal protective equipment stuff. So what is it? What is PPE? Personal protective equipment is our last line of defense. It's the barrier between us and whatever hazard is out there. So as employers, we've had to make choices, right? We've had to do, we know there's a hazard out there. The job that we're going to do is going to be hazardous. There's going to be a chemical present or something that could hurt us. And so they've had to do a hazard assessment. Now, after they do the hazard assessment, they have to determine if there are engineering controls they can put into place. Can we substitute something? Can we substitute this job? Can we do something different? If there's not, to get rid of that hazard, then we have to do some workplace practice controls. And that's things like rules and regulations, like when you use this piece of machinery, this is how you'll do it, or this, that, or the other thing to avoid injury. But there's still going to be some kind of hazard present. So what do we got to do now? We've got to put on PPE. Because that PPE is that last line of defense now. We've gone through all these other things to try and make it so our try and make it so that we can be safe. Because the personal protective equipment is our last line of defense. There's no such thing as perfect personal protective equipment because we're at the end now. We're at the end of this hierarchy of controls, and we need to make sure now that we prevent this injury from happening. Because there's no perfect PPE, we've got to talk about PPE and the limitations of it, how you use it, and when you have it, how you're supposed to use it. So there are different types of personal protective equipment, right? Eye and face protection, head protection, hand, foot, respiratory, hearing protection, all different kinds of personal protective equipment. If you want to get a helmet that looks like yours truly, you can do that. Just make sure it meets the requirements of your personal protective equipment program. Because there's limitations to all of our personal protective equipment that we have out there. Large limitation here is non-use. If you check out this picture here, why is this gentleman not using his personal protective equipment? So he's using his hearing protection. Great. Does he have gloves on? No. Does he have his eye protection? He's got his eye protection, right? But he's not using it. But why is he not using it, right? That's the big question here. Is he not using it because it's not fitted correctly? Is it too tight on his head? Is it too loose? Are they worn out? Are they degraded? Are they scratched? Are they clouded? Are they foggy? Or maybe has he just made this cut 100,000 times and he's thinking, it's going to be quick. I don't need to put on my safety glasses. It's going to be quick. It's going to be over. And we're going to be able to move on with the day. But I'm here to tell you, it's the one time that you don't put it on, you think, I don't need it this time, that you're going to get hurt. It happens every time. It's like driving in traffic, right? The lane that you're moving in is going slow, so you change lanes, and evidently the lane that you just came from now starts moving faster than you. It's just what happens. It's the way the world works. Same thing with personal protective equipment. The one time you choose not to wear it, it's the one time you're going to get hurt. So when you're selecting your personal protective equipment, your employer should have gone through some things for you, right? Your employer should have gone through an evaluation, done a hazard assessment, and made sure that they're selecting the right PPE for the right kind of job. Now you can use different kinds of selection guides for this. You could look at labels on pieces of equipment or chemicals or things for suggestions on personal protective equipment. You can rely on experts. You can bring Jason or I in. We're happy to have those discussions around personal protective equipment and what we can do to help you make those right selections for your team. As workers, we have responsibilities. When personal protective equipment is required, we are required to wear it, right? If it's been prescribed and our employer says we've got to do it, we've got to wear it. If they say we have to wear safety glasses, we have to wear safety glasses. If they say we've got to wear gloves, we've got to wear gloves. Hearing protection, we've got to use it. Okay. It is our responsibility to wear it when it's required and to use it as it's intended. It's also our responsibility to keep it clean and sanitary and to report any kind of problems that we have with our personal protective equipment. So for example, the gentleman that we saw with the goggles on his head, if those were worn out or degraded to a point that he couldn't see out of those, well, he has to let his supervisors know so they can get him a new pair of safety goggles so he can be safe. So report your problems with your personal protective equipment to make sure that you can use it effectively. When you're inspecting your personal protective equipment, make sure that you're looking at it and you are confident in its ability to protect you. Because remember, it's your last line of defense between you and whatever hazard is going to be there. If it's a single-use piece of equipment, it really is a single use. So things like nitrile gloves, right? Those are single-use pieces of equipment. If you use it, chuck it, get rid of it. You don't need it anymore, okay? Don't try and save, 3 cents by keeping the same pair of blue gloves over and over and over again. Please, if it's a single-use piece of equipment, inspect it and then get rid of it when you use it. Inspect your personal protective equipment before every single use, right? Inspect your safety glasses, inspect your goggles, inspect your gloves, your aprons, your safety boots, your hearing protection. Are they still good to go? Are they going to protect you in case of a hazard cropping up? Okay, make sure that you protect yourself by inspecting your PPE and making sure that it's good to go for you to use. So our employers out there, if you're an employer, if you're a supervisor, these are some of your responsibilities. Okay, OSHA doesn't require signatures on many things. One of the things they do require signatures on is this hazard assessment. Okay, an OSHA requirement is before if you determine that personal protective equipment is required, or if you're going to have a new piece of machinery brought in or a new work practice that you're going to do, it's required that you perform a hazard assessment on that piece of equipment or on that new job or on a piece of equipment that you're requiring personal protective equipment on. You have to do a hazard assessment. And then with that hazard assessment, it has to be certified and it has to be signed by a competent person. Now, that competent person is just the supervisor, or somebody who has sufficient knowledge and skills in order to determine what personal protective equipment is required. And I think this is an area that we can really improve on, is making sure that if we're requiring personal protective equipment of the employees, that a hazard assessment has been completed. This is one of those low-hanging OSHA fruits, right? If they come in and do an inspection on you, or if Utah OSHA gives you a visit and you say, do you have a piece of equipment that you require personal protective equipment on? You tell them yes, they're going to want to see this hazard assessment. So let's make sure we get out there, we get these hazard assessments done and determine, why we need personal protective equipment and what exactly is required. Because then it's our responsibility after we perform this hazard assessment and that we provide the personal protective equipment for the employees. Okay, the employer's responsibility is to buy that PPE, is to train the employees how to use it, and then how to maintain and replace that personal protective equipment if it needs to be replaced. They should review and update their program almost constantly, just to make sure that what they prescribed earlier is really still working. Okay, talk to your employees and work with them. If you're the employee, talk to your supervisor. Is your PPE working? Is it appropriate? Is it sufficient for your needs? If it's not, let's redo those hazard health assessments and make sure that we get those personal protective equipments done how they need to be. It's also the employer responsibility to pay for most of the OSHA standard personal protective equipment. Things like foot protection, non-prescription eye protection, hard hats and hearing protection, respiratory protection, all those things, the employer, it's their responsibility to pay for. Okay, we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. But training, for example, is crucial for employees, right? Employees have to be trained on personal protective equipment. They have to be trained when they have to wear it, how they should wear it, how to take it on, how to take it off, how to adjust it, the limitations of that personal protective equipment, because one piece of personal protective equipment is great for one scenario and not so great for another. Okay, so letting that employee know this one is good for this machine, or this one is good for this act or this machine. Making sure that all of the different personal protective equipments have been trained on and the employees properly know how to use them is absolutely crucial to making sure that our personal protective equipment program is functioning properly. All right, now we're going to talk just for a brief minute about the different kinds of personal protective equipment, why they're so important. Our number one most important personal protective equipment is our eyes. Saying personal protective equipment 100 times really is difficult. But what we really recommend is that anyone working outside of an office area, anyone outside of an office should have a pair of safety glasses. Okay, so if you're out in the field, if you're out mowing lawns, if you're working in a park, if you're a streets employee, whatever, you should have a pair of safety glasses. Okay, anyone working outside of the office should have that. Now, what you're looking for in eye and face protection and safety glasses, you want it to cover the front and the side, so protecting from an impact coming at you and something coming laterally from the sides. What you're looking for on your safety glasses is a Z87 rating. So on the inside of the frame of those glasses that you have, it should have a stamp there that says Z87. If it does, you're great. Those are safety eyeglasses. Okay. If it doesn't, then you're going to want to reevaluate your safety eyeglasses. Now, just a point here on prescription glasses and sunglasses, right? Prescription glasses are not normally safety glasses. A lot of folks want those safe prescription glasses to count as safety glasses. Sunglasses are the same thing, okay? They're only safety glasses if they're specifically marked with that Z87 rating. Now, this is where we get into an area with employers. So let's say I'm a worker and I have prescription eyeglasses, and I'm working on with a piece of machinery, and my employer has gone through the health hazard assessment and determined that eye protection is required on this piece of equipment. In order to provide personal protective equipment, the employer provides a face shield and safety goggles and safety glasses, and says you have to wear one of these pieces of equipment while you're working on this piece of equipment. I decide, I have my prescription glasses and I want those to count. Does the employer have to pay for my prescription glasses? Well, the answer is no. What the employer has to do, they have to provide you a vehicle in order to do this job safely. And they've done that with the face shield, the safety goggles. But you as the employee decide, I don't want to wear safety goggles over the top of my prescription eyeglasses. I want my prescription glasses just to count. Okay, so at that point, that cost is on you to make sure you get prescription glasses that are safety glasses. Okay. Now, the employer has to provide you the safety goggles, the face shield, the safety glasses, so you have that choice. But if you make the choice that you want something above and beyond or some kind of special accommodation that is above and beyond what the employer is providing, that's on you. Now, we get into an area here with Americans with Disabilities Act, right, with the ADA. If there's some kind of reasonable accommodation that has to be made for somebody with some kind of a disability, now those are things you're going to want to talk about. So obviously, if there's a special accommodation that needs to be made, the employer pays for something like that. But if it's a personal convenience or something that you as an employee, you just want to when you're out doing the weed whacking, you want to wear sunglasses, but your sunglasses are not Z87 rated. Okay, you've got to make sure that they're Z87 rated. If the employer provides you safety glasses and you say, I want sunglasses instead, okay, those are things that are above and beyond what the employer actually has to do. So let's just make sure that we use those pieces of equipment, those PPEs. Why? Well, this is why. So this is a bad picture. If you don't want to see a bad picture of something we're trying to avoid here, don't look here. But we don't want a piece of wire going right through your eye. Okay. So make sure you wear those safety glasses. Make sure they're Z87 rated. Make sure you're doing things the right way. All right, let's talk about head protection for a couple minutes. There are two types of hard hats out there. Type 1 hard hat protects you from vertical drop hazards, so things coming and hitting you on top of the head. Then you have your type 2, which is good for a vertical drop and a lateral impact, so things coming from the outside. In addition to those two different types, there are also different classes of head protection. So you have a class G, which is your general duty, which is your most likely that's out there. Up to 2200 volts protects from falling objects. Your type E, which is good for electrical work, up to 20,000 volts there. And your type C, which is a conductive piece of head protection with no electrical protection there. So you don't want to use that in any kind of electrical capacity. Now, how do you figure out what kind of hard hat you actually have and what it's protecting you from? And if that hard hat is sufficient for what the job you're doing? Well, you look on the inside of the brim, and on the inside of the brim, you're going to see this kind of placard. On the left-hand side, you're going to see what kind of hard hat this is. So this hard hat here, this is a type 1 class E, which means type 1, it protects from that vertical drop hazard, and class E is that electrical work. Okay, so make sure that you inspect and you look at your hard hats and make sure that it's complying to what kind of job you're doing, because you don't want to have that class C, that conductive hard hat, if you're working in any kind of electrical capacity. So let's make sure that we check our hard hats and make sure that they're correct for the type of work we're doing. Now, your foot protection. Foot protection again is, we're looking at steel-toed shoes, right? Steel-toed composite, shoes with a box in the front to protect your toes from getting crushed. You want to look for puncture-resistant soles. Now, you can either have a steel box or a composite toe box. Steel toe box, composite toe box for non-electrical applications. If you're working non-electrical, steel or composite, either works. But if you're ever going to be working in an electrical capacity, electrical setting, okay, you're going to want that composite toe box. You don't want steel, something that conducts electricity, right? That composite toe box is not going to conduct electricity, and therefore it makes you safer. All right, now about hearing protection. The OSHA standard says that your employer has to provide hearing protection if it's too loud, okay? Look at the table here on the left-hand side. If you're working 8 hours a day, and your decibel levels are 90 decibels at a constant exposure, 90 decibels, you got to have hearing protection. So as the sound goes up, as the things get louder, the jobs we're doing gets louder, the duration you could be exposed to during the entire day goes down. Okay. What does all that mean though? Right? There's a lot of numbers there. What do these decibels actually mean? Check this out. Okay. A power mower, a lawnmower, weed whacker, 107 decibels. Okay. 107 decibels that piece of machinery operates at. If we go back to this chart here, 107 decibels, where does that fall? Well, that falls right between 105 and 110. OSHA speak, what do? You round up. Okay. So we're at 110 decibels. So that means if you're out mowing lawns, if you're riding that riding lawnmower for longer than a half an hour, you need hearing protection. Okay. Your employer should provide you with hearing protection. You as an employee, we should wear it. Okay. Wear those earplugs, wear those earmuffs. Okay. You have to make sure that you're protecting yourself. Hearing protection, again, if you have them, you got to use them. Okay. Wear your earplugs, wear your earmuffs. Okay. Make sure that you're protecting yourself. Now, respiratory protection. So respiratory protection program that requires a lot of things. Okay. You have to be fit tested. You have to do medical evaluations. That's to be a whole written program around respiratory protection. There are two major types of respiratory protection that we look at. We have air purifying or we have atmosphere supplying. Air purifying, that's what you see with the canisters, right? They have canisters or cartridges or filters. That does not supply oxygen. All that does is it purifies the air, so when you breathe it in, it removes the harmful contaminants. Any kind of respiratory protection program, though, has to be written, has to be certified. You have to go through all these different steps. Retroreflective clothing. Okay, if you're working in the street, if you're ever going to step outside of your vehicle where there's traffic, you should have a retroreflective clothing on. Okay, vest, hard hat, pants, things that make you visible. High visibility safety apparel. You want to look at your tags, make sure they're class 2 or class 3 retroreflective clothing. That just says that they reflect that light and they're very, very visible in case it's dark. Okay. So anytime you step outside of the vehicle, if you're going to step outside where there's traffic, where there's construction equipment, where there's anything where you're working around, got to have your retroreflective clothing on. Okay. So let's make sure we do that. All right. Now we're just going to take a look at a few jobs that some of you out there might do. Right. And what pieces of personal protective equipment could be valuable for you, or what you should need at a bare minimum. Okay. General public works, safety glasses, you're outside. Make sure you wear appropriate clothing for the job, like no welding and Tyvek. Okay. That's bad news. Make sure you have the right gloves for the right job. Safety toe boots, whether steel or composite toe box, depending on what you're working on. If you're ever in the roadway, make sure you have your retroreflective clothing on. Your ear protection, make sure your employer has gone through that health hazard assessment and always have your ear protection available if you need it. Okay, hard hats for excavation, and if you're working with elevated loads, and sunscreen. I mean, you're outside, it's hot. Okay, let's protect our skin by putting sunscreen on. Now, what if you do landscape work? What if you're a lawnmower? What if you're a weed whacker? What if you're going out and doing those kind of jobs? Goodness, I am having issues with making sure that I click the right button. I'm so sorry. It's a Monday morning, everybody. Landscape work. Okay, make sure you have your safety glasses on and your gloves. Make sure you wear your appropriate clothing. What does that mean for landscape work and appropriate clothing? Yeah, I mean safety boots. Okay, safety boots and long pants. Make sure you wear long pants when you're mowing or trimming. Okay, you don't want an errant rock coming out and smacking you in the shin. Okay, that's bad news. Okay, make sure you wear long pants. Make sure you're wearing a hard hat if you're working with elevated loads, if you're doing any kind of excavation work. Okay, digging graves, things like that. Okay, make sure you wear your hard hats. Face shields when trimming. And make sure you wear your ear protection. Again, 107 decibels for that power mower. That's loud. Okay, let's make sure we wear our hearing protection. If you're working with a chainsaw, doing chainsaw work, make sure you wear your safety glasses. Make sure you have appropriate gloves and chaps. Safety boots are incredibly important. Make sure you have a hard hat with a face screen and ear protection, obviously. Now, law enforcement officers, make sure you have your safety glasses with you at all times. Nitrile gloves always with you at all times. Your Kevlar vest, your safety boots. Make sure you have a composite toe on those safety boots, though. If you're working the road, again, getting out the road, make sure you have a richer reflective clothing on. And your ear protection for the firing range. So when you're going to practice your firearms training, make sure you wear your ear protection. Now, if you're applying chemicals and pesticides, biggest thing here with your personal protective equipment is to read the label and follow the directions on that label, because those directions are going to tell you what personal protective equipment is going to be required when you're applying the chemical. Again, safety glasses because you're working outside. Make sure you wear your apron or chemical and protective suit if you're mixing chemicals or pouring chemicals into your different applicators. Make sure you have appropriate gloves on. Leather gloves in a chemical application or mixing chemicals or dumping chemicals or whatever you're doing, it's no good, right? You get some chemical on your leather gloves, what does it do? It just soaks into your hands, doesn't protect you at all. So make sure you have the correct type of personal protective equipment. Then your respirator, make sure you have a good respirator and make sure you have a program, right? If you're having to use a respirator, okay, air purifying or air supplying, okay, it's got to be you have to have a program behind it with fit tests and medical evaluations and things like that. Okay. What about ATVs and ATV operation? Number one for ATV and ATV operation is you should have a helmet. Okay, that should be 100%. That is the rule. We don't get on their ATV. We don't drive our UTV without wearing a helmet. Okay, so make sure you have a helmet anytime you're on the ATV or the UTV. Should be a 100% steadfast, no questions rule. Safety glasses, make sure you have those safety glasses on. You're wearing appropriate clothing, long sleeves, gloves, long pants. Okay, make sure you have sturdy boots and shoes. Make sure that you are going to protect it if something happens in that ATV. Because with personal protective equipment, right? Number one, let's make sure we assess the hazard. Let's make sure we get out there and do those health hazard assessments. I mean, those are 100% absolutely important. There's things in OSHA that they really stick on. This is one of them. Is this personal protective equipment program and making sure that you have done the hazard assessment if you require personal protective equipment. It has to have a signature. Like I said, there are not many things OSHA requires an actual physical signature for. This is one of those that requires a physical signature. So please get out and do those hazard assessments. We have boilerplates on those hazard assessments that we'll send out with the recording of this, so you can make sure they're doing it the right way. Make sure you have the right PPE. If you have it, just make sure you wear it. Okay, if it's been prescribed to you, if the employer says you got to wear your PPE, you really do. You really have to wear your PPE. Okay. Whew. Okay, that was a sprint. It wasn't a marathon, Jason.
That was a lot of stuff. Quick, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for the information. Folks, if you got any questions or comments, type them into the chat box and we'll get those answered right now. One question is what type of helmet do you have to wear on an ATV?
So the type of helmet for the oh my gosh, I was going to say VTA. The type of helmet for the ATV, it should be a DOT approved helmet. Okay, it'll have a DOT sticker on the back that says DOT approved.
Yep, those are required for over the road.
And there are, and Daryl says also, and you're exactly correct. There are new licensing requirements for ATV and UTV use. You have to actually take an online course. It's about an hour long. It's free, doesn't cost anything, but it is good for your life. So you take it once and you're done with it.
Yeah. And beyond work, it's required for
Personal use,
operating ATV on any state lands, federal lands as well. So yeah, great, Daryl. Thanks for bringing that up as well. It looks like that's all. Those are all the questions that we have today. Is there any final words you might have?
Just if you got your PPE, you got to use it. You have to. It's not optional. It's not an optional thing. Please use your PPE. It's there to help and protect you. It's not always the most glamorous thing. Who cares? You're working with coworkers. Wear your PPE.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Folks, go out and have a safe day. Hey, and before you do, you may want to hang around at 10 o'clock. I'm going to be talking about recreation risk. So if you haven't signed up for that, please go to utahtrust.gov and click on training and events, and you can sign up right there. One other quick question there, Mike. Do you have a hazard assessment form to share? We will send one of those out, PPE hazard assessment form. We'll send that out with the email letting you know that the recording of this session has gone up onto YouTube. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.